In the 2025.10 update for DDM, we've added a number of improvements to the admin client. Firstly, we have updated the themes, which can be found up here in the top right. You can select Windows 11 System, which will adjust with your system settings, or you can manually select a different theme. We've also added a maximum query limit. Setting can be found under System, Settings, and here we have the maximum query limit. Previously, you could only set the default query limit here. This meant users could exceed this if they wished, so limiting the maximum search allows you to optimize server performance. Next, we will look at multi-factor authentication. We've added support for multi-factor authentication for Office and admin clients where it was previously only available for the web client. All of the multi-factor authentication settings, including web, can now be found under System, Security, and Multi-Factor Authentication. There are two types of authentication, email-based and authentication app. We can change the prompt that users receive for either the email-based authentication or the app-based authentication. We can also adjust the grace period for users attempting to log in here. To apply authentication, we need to navigate to System Access and Groups. And then if we right-click on one of the groups we want to apply the authentication to, we then select Edit Group. We can see our options here for Web Multi-Factor Authentication. So we can select either None, the Authenticator app, or the email authentication. We can specify how long that authentication lasts before it's required again. And we have the same options again for the Office multi-factor authentication. It should also be noted that under the right-click menu, we have the Send Multi-Factor Authentication Instructions. This will send the instructions to all of the users within that group. So here we can see the email that is sent, which gives the instructions and a QR code for setting up the authenticator. Once configured, if we attempt to log into DDM, the affected users will now be prompted to use the authentication app to provide their verification code. We've also made some changes to the email logging system. This now captures multi-factor authentication emails that had previously not been captured. This change allows for better troubleshooting when adding multi-factor authentication or adding new users. It also allows you to keep an audit trail of multi-factor authentication users. Another small change we've made within the admin client. Previously, the URL options for your web client were found in the email settings. These settings can now be found in System, Web Client, General Settings, and here we can set our internal and external URLs. Next, we will look at a new feature that has been added to DDM, which is batch printing. It enables users to print multiple items from the DDM Office environment. To enable this setting, you need to create a batch print profile. Here we can see a batch print profile that I've created previously. If we right click, we can see our options to add, edit and delete profiles, so you can create multiple profiles. If we select the edit option, we can see the options that need to be completed. So the first option is the name, and this name is how it will appear in DDM, so it needs to be appropriately descriptive. The description we will see in the table, so it needs to give the admin user the appropriate information about this profile. The file formats is where we specify which file formats are exported from the DDM environment, ready for FolderMill to pick up and process. It should be noted that the first matching file type found will be used. For example, if we were to set native as our first option and try to print a drawing from DDM, it would send the native version of the file from your CAD system. So you need to consider the order that you put these in, which is why I've put the .pdf first in this case. The output folder is a location where these files will be exported to and is monitored by FolderMill. And then we can enable or disable these rules, so as you create new profiles, you can turn them on and off as needed without having to delete them and start again when you require them again. Next, we will select the groups that have access to the print profile. So you may wish to control which departments have access. So you may set up a batch print rule for engineering, a batch print rule for production, and a batch print rule for purchasing, for example. So in this case, I've created a rule for the engineering department, and I've given the engineering department access. We confirm this and head over to our server. So the batch print location needs to be accessible by the server. This is where the files will be exported to. And on here we need to have FolderMill monitoring the folder. So here I've got FolderMill monitoring this folder. So if we edit this rule, when we're setting up a rule, we need to point FolderMill at this location. And once pointed at this location, we need to add a new action set, which would be to print a document. And here we can set up the printer as required, and we have our other print options available as well as our advanced settings. I'll cancel this because I've already got the print profile set. And FolderMill will now monitor this folder, waiting for files to appear. If we now head over to DDM Office, and we navigate to some of our files, I can use multi-select to select a number of files, and under the right-click menu in Send To, we have our new batch print option, and here we have our available batch print profiles. So if I select the engineering batch print, we will then be shown the file types that are being exported to the location. If I confirm this, we can head back over to the server, and we can see that the files have been exported, and when FolderMill is running, it processes those files. If we head back to the administration client, we'll now look at some of the changes we've made to the version updaters. The version updaters can be found under CAD and neutral files and CAD settings. The first change that we've made is we've added the Inventor Version Updater to the admin client. This is previously accessible from the file location. And within the version updater, we've made some changes. We've unified the settings available within each version updater. So these are the options that allow us to filter the files to be processed. So we can confirm whether we want to process the latest issue only or all files, whether we want to process the newest or oldest first, whether we want drawings, parts or assemblies included. We have the ability to restrict the process to a specified number, to a specified CAD version, to a last save date range. Here we can specify week, month, year, or from and between specific dates. So if I select between dates, I can specify the from and to in these fields here. I also now have the ability to restrict by business unit. This is particularly useful where you may have multiple business units operating on different versions of the same CAD tool. And we can also specify whether the files from all DDM servers are to be processed. Below this we have the run details, so this is how we specify the run conditions for the version updater. We can specify that all files that are shown are to be processed. We could specify that the process is only to run for a set number of minutes or a set number of records. And we also have the ability to restart CAD every set number of records. And the reason for this is to clear the working memory to ensure that the CAD program still operates efficiently. Below this we have the file server free space. So this gives us a bit of information before we run this process about how much free space we have available, and below this we have the estimated minimum space required, ensuring that we don't fill up our storage. If I adjust these settings, so we can see we have some items available for processing. We've added an additional tab at the top which will display the items that require processing. This is particularly useful when items fail to process. It allows the user to search for the problem item to either identify the issue or to manually update the file to the latest version of their CAD tool. This list will only show items that require processing that match the filter criteria from the main tab. So in this case, because these files are 2024 and I'm running 2026, these files require processing. If I had any 2026 files in this database, they wouldn't appear on this list. At the top of the screen, we can configure the number of results shown. So if you have a particularly large database with a lot of data that requires inspection, you can limit the number of results shown. We have a search functionality, so we can search any of the visible columns within the table. And we've also added within the table the right-click option to copy the item number, which allows us to paste that information back into DDM to run a search. We can sort each of the columns within the table, and we also have the ability to filter each column by its contents. So I could specify that I want to see parts only, for example. And when we have a lot of data, we have the ability to export all of the information to Excel. And that is a summary of the updates to the admin client in DDM 2025.10.